Um, okay, looks like I've a bit of a Boris Johnson going on here, a bit dishevelled. Um, I spoke a bit about my take on both the Conservative victory and the Labour success of this general election. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the media aspect because I think it's worth a good bit of commentary. So, I watched a clip a short time ago, which showed the exit poll, and it was from Channel 4, and it just showed the reaction. They had a panel including Amber Rudd, former Home Secretary, Tom Watson, Shami Chakrabarti, um, and I believe Stanley Johnson was there. I can't remember the others. But anyway, obviously, Rudd was happy with the results being a Conservative. Watson was and Chakrabarti were not happy. Um, but I noticed a comment underneath saying, could they get more left wing audience if they tried? And certainly, on face value, it did seem to be a biased audience. So that got me thinking about the subject about the media aspect of this election. Um, I think this is something that goes very much down partisan lines. What I mean by that is the perception of bias very much depends on who you ask. So if you ask a Corbyn supporter, they'll say, yes, the whole media was out to get Jeremy. If you ask a Johnson supporter, they'll say, oh, the left wing media was vilifying our man. The truth is, I think there were biases on both sides. Ultimately, I think it was slightly more against Corbyn and Labour. If we actually break it down, I think it was probably more against Corbyn and Labour. This is not to say that the negative reportage was factually wrong or inaccurate. As I've said before, a lot of the critique against Corbyn to just dismiss it as a right wing smear is a weak argument when you actually look at what the man himself has said over the years. But Corbyn himself has kind of, and so has McDonnell, they have kind of used the media as one aspect. Well, really, they've jumped to that. They said, as McDonnell said in an interview, presumably in his home, the media had done a number on Jeremy. They shafted him, and a number of other senior Labour figures said that, and Corbyn himself alluded to it. He said that it was quite an angry defeat. Actually, he said at times the media's behaviour has been downright disgusting. Their intrusion into one's family life. Now, he didn't really specify what he meant by that. Most of the attacks I've seen have been at Corbyn himself, nothing against his wife, or I believe he has a son. I mean, I actually don't know much about Corbyn's private life. I know that he has a South American wife, and that's that. But so when he talks about that, I wonder, is he referring to doorstepping? And if he was, then he should have named it. He should have said, this is a particularly odious practice. If he said that, then I would have agreed. I hate doorstepping. I think it's a pretty obnoxious paparazzi style tactic. And Johnson's been subject to it as well. That whole Rowgate thing, where he had the row with Carrie Simmons, the way the press were gathering outside like vultures probably caused her a lot more stress than any row that any couple could have. So I do think that, we're talking about political parties looking at themselves. The media also needs to look at itself in terms of that sort of behaviour, because I think it is trash journalism. It's just not professional. It's it's behaving like the paparazzi. I have no problem with leaders facing tough questions. In fact, I think it's very important, but not that style, not that sort of gotcha style thing that they do. I mean, it's true also of election night. There is too much negativity from the press. What I mean by that is when a candidate has lost their seat, my goodness, the media like to gloat about it. They'll say, "Oh, you lost resoundingly, didn't you?" And the defeated MP is, yes, yes, it's been a difficult night. Why do you think you lost? And it's almost like they're trying to rub salt into the wound. Like, it just seems a bit. I suppose the idea is they want authenticity, so they want them to say what's on their mind as it happens. It still seems a little bit frankly cruel. I mean, MPs go through enormous pressure. They campaign very heavily. It's a very exhausting process, and they kind of put them on the spot. Like, why did you lose? It feels like to me, like rubbing salt in the wound. I don't really like it. I prefer something like, oh well, commiserations, you lost. What do you think happened? Something like that. Not just like you lost. It's just a bit too blunt and a bit too. I mean, it's evenly applied to be fair to all the parties, but it's still a bit classless, I think. So I think the media needs to look at itself as well. Now to break it down a little bit about this aspect of supposed bias, I think if you look at the print media, the print newspapers, there are more right wing newspapers than left wing newspapers. So let's just break it down. The Eye, the Independent, the Guardian, the Observer, which is the weekend edition of the Guardian, and the Morning Star, which is pretty far left and has little circulation. That is about it for the left. I'm talking about newspapers here, I'm not including magazines, because obviously you'd have New Statesman and so on. But I'm talking about daily newspapers. On the right, you have the Daily Telegraph. Oh, excuse me, the Daily Mirror is the big tabloid on the left. But on the right, you have the Daily Telegraph, you have the Daily Mail, the Daily Express, the Sun, the Evening Standard, and the Times is centre right, but it's still to the right. Um, so I'd say there's definitely a more heavy bias in the print media to conservatives and to the right. Um, I'm not sure about the Scotsman. I can't remember what their editorial slant is. And the Metro is relatively neutral. It's worth noting the Metro is now Britain's most circulated newspaper. It surpassed the Sun. What the reasons are for that, whether it is because it's free, and it's always been free. So I don't know what the reasons for that is. The whole print industry is switching online anyway. Um, when it comes to broadcast media, one might argue there's a left wing bias because if you look at studio audiences, for example, that Question Time event in Sheffield, it was clearly a left wing audience. The way that Johnson was being heckled, much more so than Corbyn. So one could argue that the broadcast media is more to the left, although Sky News, I would say, definitely has a right wing angle. Channel 4, left wing. BBC, now the BBC, this is a slightly murky one because on the surface, many people say, oh yeah, it's left wing, it's politically correct, it's left wing. But Corbyn supporters are convinced that it's the exact opposite. They're convinced that BBC's anti Corbyn. I think the truth of the matter is, when it comes to the BBC, it's such a big organisation that it's kind of guilty of both sides, depending on. I mean, Andrew Neil is clearly conservative, but he's also, I think, one of the best journalists around. He is conservative, but he doesn't go easy on conservatives either. And there was a whole issue of Johnson with, running away from that interview, perhaps because Neil is known for his really scrutinising style, and yet not a paxman. The thing I like about Andrew Neil is he's tough, but he's not crass. The thing with Paxman was he was tough, but he sometimes just seemed like he was out for gotcha style journalism in a way that Andrew Neil isn't. Um, but I think it's fair to say Neil is his personal politics probably do go to the right. There's others in the BBC that would definitely be to the left. Definitely the political correctness aspect that it's long been known for is to the left. Um, so let me get back to, because this is less relevant to the Tories because they won resoundingly. It's more relevant to Labour because they lost badly. I think it risks sounding like an excuse just to blame the media because it sounds like only now is Corbyn and McDonnell kind of acknowledging, well, yeah, it might have been us. And if Labour continue with this sort of intransigence, this sort of refusal to look at the situation and continue going further to the left, then they'll have learned not a thing. And to just dismiss it all as being the right wing media is a bit of a cop out. I've always said that The Sun and Co. was always going to be anti Corbyn from the start, and some of their coverage was absolutely disgraceful. It wasn't based on policy, it was based on ad hominem attacks. I mean, that is just, gutter journalism. It's like what they've done with Ed Miliband and the whole sandwich thing. I think even some conservatives said they didn't like that. So to me, that made me angry at the time because they were trying to make that an issue when they should have been focusing on policy. I don't mind an editor taking a particular stance that is critical of policy. It's naive to think all editors are going to be absolutely neutral. That's never been the case. Newspapers have always had a slant. So I certainly don't expect that, but at least make it on policy and not ad hominem attacks on appearance or anything like that. I'm not saying character isn't relevant. Of course, character is relevant. But summed up, the media doesn't come out entirely clean in this. I mean, I do not share the view that it's because the media were against and Corbyn lost. I think Corbyn lost because of Corbyn. I think Corbyn lost and his front bench lost because of their own statements over the years. I mean, you can only blame the media to an extent. The media is powerful, but it's not that powerful. And people are not completely stupid. They are capable of thinking for themselves. So it's kind of insulting people's intelligence by suggesting that everyone who voted for the Conservatives are swayed by what the Sun says. I think that's a little bit patronising. Yes, it's influential, but it's not that influential. So if Labour want to make that as an excuse, then they're just proving that they're not going to really introspect and change, and they're going to do themselves to be in wilderness for another 10 years. It may even be longer than that wilderness period from 1979 to 1997. As it stands, it's now 9 years, so it's about halfway through that period. So to put that in context, it would be like if we were to compare this era to that era, we are now in 1988, which means another 9 years. I know it doesn't work like that, but just to draw an analogy. So Labour, if they continue to go to the left, what happened when Michael Foot lost badly in 1983? Labour gradually moved to the centre ground under Kinnock, Smith, and then Blair, and that was the right thing to do. Some might say Blair went too much to the centre. That's for a whole other debate. But the point is, it worked because Labour won resoundingly in 1997. So Labour really needs to look at itself and think: Is this hard left position? Is this working? And the answer is clearly it isn't. I think Brexit was a major factor, but I don't think it was the only factor. Let me know your thoughts. If you think I'm wrong, if you think, oh no, Nathan, the media is totally left wing or the media is totally right wing, please provide some substance for that because I think you can find evidence both ways.